Hello. So this is not entirely unrelated to my previous video on free speech. Well, it's actually very closely related. I want to talk about Antifa. Now, around the world, Antifa has regional variations, um, and it's short, obviously, for anti-fascism. But like I say, around the world, there are regional variations going by various names, but there is generally some consistent trends with what these groups look like and how they behave. Um, Generally, they tend to turn up at any sort of event um, or any place where they feel that the right is having a voice. Now, to be clear, this is not a pro nationalist video. I have no more time for neo nationalist groups than I do for Antifa, which is what I'm going to be talking about in this video. So I want to make that very, very clear. I am not coming from alt-right or neo-nationalist perspective. I have no time for that sort of ideology either. But I honestly don't think it is as tolerated by the mainstream as the far left is. I think the far right is seen for what it is. It's ultra nationalist. Very often is racist. It goes without saying when you dig beneath the surface. So this video is not about them. As far as I'm concerned, they are their own worst enemies. It's about the alt left, which is basically epitomized by Antifa. Now, like I say, they turn up to any sort of situation where they feel that they need to oppose or smash the fash, as they like to put it. Now, this is not to say that everyone they oppose is innocent. There are people who could be called alt rights, who could be described as having ultra nationalist viewpoints. The problem with Antifa in all its various forms is that they're not content with just taking on fascism as they interpret it. They will violently oppose anybody who doesn't see the world exactly the way they do. And if you have any doubt about that, look at what happened last year in Germany. Sarah Wagenknecht, I think I'm pronouncing her name correctly, is a central figure of Die Link or Die Left party. My German's a bit patchy at the moment, but basically, she's a well known left wing German politician. Well, last year at an event, she had cake rather aggressively shoved into her face. This wasn't just like a run of the mill, oh, let's throw something at a politician thing. This was pretty aggressive in the way it was done by an Antifa thug. What was the reason for that, you wonder? Like, why would they attack a lefty? Because she had said that she felt there needed to be a limit on refugees. And so to them, that's blasphemy, you know? So they attacked her. That is what they do. And more often than not, they cover their faces because, like all bullies, they are cowards. So they will violently attack anyone who doesn't see the world exactly the way they do, um, and they cover their faces. So it's it's a case of we can give abuse, but we're not going to take any. And if anyone fights back, if anyone you know uses the same tactics that they do against them, they're the first to shout about persecution. Um, Basically, I've got no respect for them. I think they're nothing but thugs and criminals. The way they behave. If your whole point about smashing the fash is vandalizing businesses, throwing projectiles at the police, burning cars, you've got no cause. All you are is thugs. And this is actually part of a bigger problem with the far left these days. They are now infiltrating, well, I say now, it's been going on for a while, academic institutions, university campuses. I've just read a very interesting article in the London Times by Matt Ridley. This is in today's London Times, and basically, he's arguing that what we are seeing is has some has some hallmarks of what was going on in the Cultural Revolution in China in the 1960s. Well, it reached its peak in the late 60s. It went on into the 1970s. But that was one of the darkest chapters of human history, a truly grotesque, hideous period of turmoil and upheaval where students literally killed their own teachers. Children rose up against their parents. It was a horrible period. The Chinese Communist government still hasn't truly acknowledged the excesses of Mao's fanaticism, or the fanaticism carried out in his name. Now, I don't think that the situation's as bad as that, because I don't think that wider community would allow that to happen. But when you look at what's going on in university campuses, and I think Matt Ridley really lays this out, there is a sinister war on freedom of expression. And anyone who's associated with the centre, or especially the right, is basically being bullied into silence or being shoved into a corner by these alt left student extremists. And I find it very concerning, very concerning. Um, because if there cannot be open discussion in universities as places of knowledge, as places of debate, then where on earth can it happen? That's the problem. Um, I also take issue with this idea that simply being anti fascist somehow gives a person moral credibility. Joseph Stalin was anti fascist, and yet he was one of the biggest killers of the 20th century. So, you don't get any moral credibility by endorsing one extreme over the other. So just because you're against Nazism in the sense of German National Socialism doesn't mean that you have moral credibility. It's perfectly compatible to be against Nazism, i.e., racial purity and all that sort of stuff, but also recognize the far left for what it is. And as a centrist, I try very hard to be consistent with this. Um, but the intolerance, the bullying tactics, the thuggery of Antifa is reprehensible, and I think they should be treated as the extremist organization that they are. During the Charlottesville unrest, I was disappointed to see a lot of people who identify with the centre and conservatives. Basically, I mean, Sajid Javid, and I might have said this in the other video, but it's worth saying again, tweeted something along the lines of, "It's pretty black and white. If you're anti-fa good, fascist bad." Well, that is an absurd simplification. He's basically saying if you're a left-wing thug and call yourself Antifa, then oh well, you must be good because you're anti-fascist. Doesn't matter if you're aggressively shouting down opponents. It doesn't matter if you even attack people who are with the centre or even the centre left. That is absurd, and for a senior politician, that was a very short-sighted thing to say. Um, so that's total nonsense. That simply because someone calls himself anti-fascist, they must be the good guy or the good girl. Not at all. I judge people on their own actions and philosophy, and the behaviour of Antifa is, it stinks. They cover their faces. They get involved in vandalism. They they're not content with just taking on white supremacists. And believe me, I have no intention of kind of playing the devil's advocate for white supremacists, but that isn't the point. They want to attack anybody who doesn't see the world exactly as they do. And what they done to Sarah Wagenknecht is a good example. Attacking hard left, for that matter, German politicians simply because she said there should be a limit on refugees. I mean, they can disagree with her, but to actually physically attack her like that, it's disgusting. And that is the mentality that these far left extremists are pushing. I understand that in political discourse, people, tempers can rise. I get that. And I've never sort of said that people should be robotic and we all, have a nice little cup of tea and have a polite discussion. I understand that political discourse makes people angry. And I would be a hypocrite if I said I never felt angry about policies, about ideology. I do. But the behavior of Antifa deserves no respect. And they should. this is why I think Trump was right to say that there was extremes on both sides. Of course, there was all right white supremacist types at Charlottesville, but to say that the other side was entirely squeaky clean is simply not true. Because Antifa did have a presence that day, and they've been turning up to all sorts of events all over the Western world in the past few years. And wherever they go, there is trouble. Now, you could say wherever the far right go, there is trouble, and you could use the same, you know. But I think that the far left, in some ways, are not scrutinized as much as the far right are. Both deserve scrutiny. And I think Matt Ridley makes a very good point that basically what we are seeing is a very sinister and very aggressive war by the likes of Antifa on freedom of conscience. And it is their religion is political correctness, and they're fanatics. And anyone, whether you're right, left, or center, who truly believes in liberty needs to be concerned about this. And so, my right wing viewers, what I would say is, please don't assume all left leaning people are like this. I can testify. I have known many left leaning people in my life who are very open minded, who wouldn't use aggressive tactics. And yes, they might have strong views, but they would not use the tactics of Antifa. So I would implore right leaning people not to assume all left wingers are like this, because they're not. Nevertheless, you can't escape the irony that those who shout loudest about tolerance are some of the least tolerant people around. So Antifa, screw them. They're thugs, they're bullies, and they're cards, and I have no respect for them. And I think that they should be treated with the same, not only the same contempt as right wing extremes, but also they should face the same legal repercussions if they use violence, if they get involved in vandalism, and yeah, there should be consistency in this. Okay, thank you for watching, and let me know your thoughts.